The Witcher, a beloved book series which inspired one of the top 10 highest-selling video games of all time, The Witcher 3. More recently, however, a television series which has become one of the most polarizing Netflix shows to ever air. In this video, we're going to take a closer look at Netflix's The Witcher, what went right, what went wrong, and why this show has become such an ill-famed topic among fans. In 2017, it was announced that Netflix was developing a TV show based on the Witcher novels written by Andrzej Sapkowski. Sapkowski was said to be a creative consultant on the show and stated, quote, "I'm thrilled that Netflix will be doing an adaptation of my stories, staying true to the source material and the themes that I have spent over 30 years writing. I'm excited about our efforts, as well as the team assembled to shepherd these characters to life," end quote. In January of 2018, however, Sapkowski denied any direct involvement on the project. And then in May of the same year, showrunner Hissrich announced that he was part of the creative team. So was Sapkowski in any way involved in the creation of the show itself? Who the hell knows? He wrote the book, so there's that. Yet there are some who might say the creative team behind Netflix's The Witcher weren't so fond of using the books themselves. Let's continue. Fun fact, Netflix originally bought the book rights with plans to make a movie. 8 books, 1 movie. Makes sense, right? Anyways, in September of 2018, Netflix announced that Henry Cavill would play Geralt of Rivia. At the time, this had me a bit concerned. I, along with some other fans of the book series, thought Cavill might be a bit too pretty to play Geralt, but he was an avid fan of the video game series, a self-proclaimed nerd, and probably the best person for the job. And upon the release of Season 1, it was blatantly obvious that this was indeed the case. Fans loved him as Geralt, or at least my wife certainly did, and everybody thought he was perfect for the role. He had the look, the voice, the mannerisms. He clearly understood the character inside and out. Season 1 largely went off without a hitch. As a fan of the books, I appreciated the fact that they treated each episode like its own, mostly self-contained short story. My only real gripe with Season 1 was the world building, which I do believe is one of the most important parts of a story, especially when it comes to fantasy. Knowing who's where and when, who's a part of which faction, and so on. This was difficult because our 3 main characters' stories were taking place in different timelines, and this was indeed quite important to know as the viewer, given that by the end of the season the timelines all catch up to one another. It's putting a lot of faith in your audience when you expect them to pick up on this right off the bat. I'm familiar with the source material, and even I didn't pick up on this till the 2nd or 3rd episode. I knew the timeline didn't quite make sense, but I had no way of knowing if it was intentional or if the writers changed the ages of the characters or what have you. The fact that I had to ask these questions means bad world building. The audience should have at least some idea of what's going on and where the characters are and so on. I had my eyes glued to the screen, but not everyone has the luxury of giving 100% of their attention all the time. And this season practically required just that. With the benefit of hindsight, this is clearly something that the Netflix writers struggle with. With the release of the dumpster fire that was Witcher Blood Origin, we got a good first-hand look at the creative chops of the writing team, and they're not good. However, without getting into all the problems of that show at the moment, the world building was terrible. There were multiple factions, multiple armies, multiple regions that we visit throughout the series, but none of the regions have any culture to distinguish them from the others. There's white people, black people, brown people, green people, big people, little people, purple people in every region they visit, all wearing the same generic tunic, just in a different color. They could hardly be bothered to even make the scenery look any different, so you have no real way to distinguish whether you're in one place or across the continent in another. Everybody is wherever they need to be for the plot to move forward, and they can seemingly cross the continent on foot in a single day, when the story supposedly takes place on a huge mass of land. Bad world building. These are but a few examples of one particular issue with the series as a whole, but circling back to Season 1, aside from the poor world building, it was pretty well received by fans. Season 2, on the other hand, was not. Critics loved it, but I would assume most of these critics didn't read the books. In an almost complete diversion from the source material, Witcher Season 2 received an unimpressive 56% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes. Little did fans know at the time that this was quite foretelling of things to come. Of the 3 seasons in the miniseries Witcher Blood and Urine, Season 2 struggled the least with world building, but mostly because the bulk of the season takes place in one location, Kaer Morhen. I'm not one of these people that thinks TV and film adaptations have to be shot for shot to the books. I think the most important thing is that the adaptation maintains the heart of the story, but naturally it should be as close to the source material as humanly possible. Literature doesn't always translate perfectly onto the big screen, and it takes a kind of talent to bring a literary work to the screen. But when you purchase the rights to a major IP, such as The Witcher, you're basically buying fans. I mean, this is the intent, right? When Disney bought Star Wars, they didn't buy it for funsies, they bought it to profit off the name. And sure enough, sadly, the sequel trilogy did make money. Here's my point. Andrzej Sapkowski's Witcher books sold 15 million copies worldwide. The Witcher 3 game sold 40 million copies, 65 million if you include the other 2 games. If 65 million people tuned in to watch The Witcher on Netflix, it would be one of the most successful shows of all time. So if you're going to buy the name Witcher, then you know fans are going to watch, because given these figures, there are a lot of fans. It's not to say that people who haven't read the books or haven't played the games didn't tune in to watch, but it just goes to show how many book fans did watch given the Rotten Tomatoes audience score. So naturally, when you butcher the lore and disrespect the source material, fans won't be particularly happy. In October of 2022, Henry Cavill announced his departure from the show and that he would no longer be playing Geralt of Rivia. This had fans pretty upset, given that he was easily the best part of the show, and with all the attention he'd been getting from the media, given that he was not only Geralt but also Superman at the time, it came to light that he was a nerd, a real nerd. Not a glasses with plastic lenses nerd, but a computer-building, World of Warcraft playing nerd. And fans loved him for it. He became far more relatable. So yeah, it would be an understatement to say that fans were upset. I've made a number of videos on this subject, so I'm not going to dive too far into it, but basically it was assumed at first that his departure had to do with his return as Superman in the DCEU. Given that he had recently announced this would be happening, however, not 2 months after announcing his departure from Witcher, he announced he would no longer be playing Superman either. And this decision was not by choice. The Witcher fan site Redanian Intelligence did some digging and found on a number of occasions that Cavill had stated that he would play Geralt for 7 seasons, quote, as long as we keep telling great stories which honor Sapkowski's work, end quote. He also stated, quote, the toughest part for me was finding that balance between the showrunner's vision and my love for the books, and trying to bring that Geralt to the showrunner's vision. It's about treading a fine line there. It's the showrunner's story, so it's an adaptation. The tricky bit for me was finding Geralt from the book's place within that, and being able to serve both as much as I could, end quote. And for the cherry on top, X-Men 97's head writer Bo DeMeo, who previously worked on a number of episodes of The Witcher, spoke on an Instagram story Q&A about how many writers on The Witcher were not fans and actively disliked the books and games, even mocking the source material. For those of you who have seen my other videos, thanks for hanging in there. Most of you probably already know about these claims, but this paints a pretty clear picture for why Cavill left the show. The fallout from Cavill's departure was devastating for showrunner Lauren Hissrich. She deployed all manner of PR in attempts to win fans back. She straight up asked fans to stay out of respect for the other cast and crew at one point. But whether she made some good points or not, fans were upset, and for good reason. They screwed over Cavill, and by screwing him, they screwed the fans. Shortly after the news that Cavill would be leaving the show, it was announced that Liam Hemsworth would be replacing him as Geralt. Yes, they didn't have the budget for Chris. The Witcher Blood Origin was released Christmas Day 2022, 2 months after Henry Cavill announced his departure from the show. The show itself was based on a small bit of lore from Sapkowski's work, the time prior to an event known as the Conjunction of the Spheres in the Witcherverse. And make no mistake, this show is exactly what the writers wanted The Witcher to be. The time before the Conjunction of the Spheres has very little lore behind it. The small amount that it does have, the writers got completely wrong, but because of this fact, the writers were able to make a show about basically whatever they wanted. They had nigh complete creative freedom to let their most innovative ideas come to light, and boy, let me tell you, they just don't have it. So for those of you who don't know, in the Witcher universe, the Conjunction of the Spheres was the event that brought monsters and humans into the same world as the elves. The elves previously were the dominant life form on the continent, and the show takes place during that time and gives a really shitty explanation for how the first Witcher came to be. It was a bad show. There's really no question about that. Critics and fans alike agreed that the show was bad. We can't say for sure if Cavill got an early viewing of the show, and this contributed to his decision to leave, but it wouldn't surprise me in the least. It didn't help that the show was released just 2 months after his announcement, so fans were already in an uproar. You could make the argument that the show performed poorly due to the fact that fans were angry about Cavill's decision, but this couldn't be further from the truth. The show was bad, did absolutely no justice by the source material, and only served to show how incompetent the writing team behind Netflix's The Witcher really was. In the months leading up to the release of Season 3 in June of 2023, Cavill and the future of The Witcher was a very hot topic online. Videos about the future of the show were flooding YouTube. Any news about Cavill, comments such as, "Can't wait for the final season," were prevalent, making a not-so-subtle dig at the show given that it very much intended to receive Seasons 4 through 7 with Liam Hemsworth. Fans wanted to let the creators know that they were not interested in a Witcher show without Cavill, and they pulled no punches to achieve this, myself included. Given that it was Henry Cavill's final season in the role of Geralt, I had assumed that Season 3 would be a success. I didn't think it would be good, but I certainly thought it would be a success given the amount of attention, negative or otherwise, it was getting online. However, it turns out that when you compare Season 3's release with Season 2's, viewership dropped pretty significantly. Data shows that all 8 episodes of Witcher Season 2 drew more than 1 million viewers during the first week per episode. However, while Episode 1 of Season 3 drew 1.1 million viewers, the following 4 episodes saw significant drops. While Episode 1 received over 1 million, Episode 5 only received 500,000. This at the very least shows that fans aren't itching to get more Witcher given that this is the end of the show they wanted to watch, the one starring Henry Cavill. But at worst, fans have just flat lost interest, and who could blame them? It's not wrong for fans to have expectations. These shows should be made to serve the fans, given that they're the ones paying the bills after all. As Cavill said himself, quote, "It's a fan's right to have whatever opinion they want to have. I don't consider that toxic, I just consider that passion," end quote. Hopefully Cavill goes down in history for that amazing take. It is too bad that Henry left the show, and it's too bad that fans are losing interest, but it is the showrunner's privilege and responsibility to give us Witcher, and they failed at that one too many times. That being said, Season 3 is incredibly close to the books. It's not a great season, but its basic narrative does follow the books, Time of Contempt. The problem with that season is it's just far too easy to notice every single time the writers insert something themselves or change something. Even if you didn't read the book, it's incredibly noticeable. Anytime the story is moving smoothly and making sense, then there's just some awkward scene that seems out of place, probably not from the book. For example, Jaskier's romance with the Prince of Redania, not from the book. I guess he's gay now, who knows, he's not in the books, but regardless, their romance seems forced. As soon as you see them on screen together, you know it's gonna go down, but it's awkward and forced, and the characters just don't have the chemistry for it to work. These are the types of things I'm talking about. These particular writers just don't have the talent to adapt Witcher, or anything for that matter. They can stay as close to the source material as they want, but it still requires some basic skill to bring those characters to the screen. Witcher Season 3 is over now, and its finale was lackluster. I thought it was better than Season 2 personally, but it's nothing particularly new or exciting. The ending also does its fair share of lore butchering, to be honest. With a critic score of 77% and an audience score of 22%, it's clear that fans are not happy. And now we're seeing a number of reports suggesting that there won't be a Season 4, and they're just gonna call it quits with Season 3, as many fans predicted. This isn't a surefire thing yet, but given the fans' response to everything that's been going on, I wouldn't be surprised. The 3 seasons as a whole aren't terrible, but they're far from the magic that the books and games brought to the table. Well, that's the video, everybody. Please subscribe. I really love making these, and I'd like to keep making them, so please subscribe and like the video. If you stuck around this long, I thank you for watching. Have a great day.